Trusting your intuition will lead you to create a passionate and joy-filled life. Are you ready to get turned on to a new way of thinking? Are you ready to meet people who have conversations that speak to the things that truly light you up? What if you had access to a podcast that featured women just like you, who shared stories that empowered you to let go of a life tied to others' expectations and to start living in the now with passion and joy? I'm Jacqueline Rodriguez, founder of Your Intuitive Light Coaching, owner of Enlightened Styles Holistic Salon, and your host of the Intuitive Light podcast for the enlightened entrepreneur. My goal is to help women recognize how tightly they are tied to negative thoughts and other people's expectations, so that they can fully embrace and become the untethered CEO they've always wanted to be. You're about to meet some amazing women who will inspire you to untether yourself from any fears, negativity that you carry and become the untethered CEO of your life. This podcast is for you, woman, champion, warrior, entrepreneur, mother, phenomenon. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Intuitive Light podcast and show. I am your host, Jacqueline Rodriguez, and thank you so much for being here today. I have got the lovely Tina Unrue, and she is a certified life and mindset coach. She's the founder and owner of Selfish Mama, and I am so excited to hear her process. Oh, I just lost a earpod. We'll go back on that. But I'm really excited to hear her process and just get to know her story. Like we always do every week, we get to hear amazing women entrepreneurs and their stories of how they've overcome struggles of entrepreneurship and really have learned a lot, and they're here to share it with you. So without further ado, here is Tina. Welcome.
Hi. I am so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. We've known each other, oh gosh, like it trickles back, I think over 2 years, right?
That sounds about right. But I'm really bad with time, so.
And especially now, like everything blends in. But
right?
It was kind of cool because we'd known each other through networking and mutual friends.
Yep.
And then what was funny is when we went to California for the Amy Porterfield Entrepreneur Experience.
Yep.
And we didn't know we were going until we got there. And we were in the hotel lobby, right?
That's right. No, wait.
No.
Was it at the airport?
It was at the airport.
It was at the airport.
Yes.
I was like, you look familiar.
Like, yes, you do too. And then we got to talking. We're like, what? We've been in the same groups. We had even talked a few times, but it was just a funny story that we were in the same place, like coming from Virginia all the way to California. And that's where we connected even deeper. So, and it was a great experience.
That's true. It was.
Yeah.
And it was a big deal for me, by the way, because I'm an introvert. So for me to actually come up with to somebody who was kind of like a stranger and be like, do I know you? I'm not sure. You know, it was a big deal. So, but I was so glad I was right. I was like, I think I know her. So
totally. And I really feel like there was a reason because we've been able to really connect since then and deepen our relationship and really get to know what we do and support one another, which I think has been such a beautiful thing, right?
Yes, it absolutely has. So,
and we just had to go to California to do it. Who knew?
We encourage everybody to do it.
Yes, just go to California and see if you know somebody, right?
That's right. Never know who you're going to run into in the airport.
Exactly. So I'm really excited for people to hear your story. And I'd love to hear, like, what is it that you do and, how'd you get started in it?
Oh, gosh. Well, like you said, I am a life and mindset coach. And so I got into it because I was a government worker and it felt like a slow death. And I was like, I need something else. And my daughter was born in 2009. She was premature. And so, I think anyway that her prematurity and everything that we had to go through to get her into this world and to nurture her life, obviously in the beginning stages, really pulled me to feel like I was imbalanced. Like I felt like I was working too much and that I didn't have enough time at home. I know that I'm not the only mom who suffers from work-life balance, struggles. But at the time, that's what I thought it was. I thought that it was because of all the things that she and I had gone through, right? And that I just felt that yearning to be with her more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's really where it started. I decided that I had to do something different. And how I came to life coaching is another story in and of itself, which I'm just not going to bore you with. But just know that there was, I feel, divine intervention at play. And it was one of the things that I was considering so that I could leave my job. And so I started the coaching program in early 2016 while I was still working. And after the first in-person module, so the program that I went through offered like a hybrid approach. You would do a lot of things remotely, but you also went in person for like very intense weekends at a time. And the first weekend that I finished and then I came home, my job felt different. And I was like, wait a second. My job didn't change. I'm the only person that changed. I'm the only, portion here that changed. And I think that for me was what was like the biggest aha. And I'm not saying that everything is mindset. I know there are a lot of people that think every single thing is mindset. And I do believe that circumstances certainly do play a part in our lives, but how we show up or what we think about a specific challenge or situation in our lives can clearly make a huge difference. And I know it because I lived it, right? So my work didn't feel like a slow death anymore. Still wanted to quit, but it didn't feel like a slow death anymore.
But that's a great point that you're bringing up right now, especially because mindset is such a huge buzzword. Everybody's saying mindset, mindset, mindset. But you can't just think your way to being positive. There has to be that shift, and it is all about perception because we all are going to have, regardless. It doesn't matter where you came from, what you're doing now. We are going to have things that happen and outside circumstances that happen to us and around us. But the huge key to that is the perception that we're putting on those things.
That's right.
And it's such a wonderful thing that you bring up. Like you felt like you were having a slow death. You go and have this this weekend where your perception changed, and you came back to, yes, you still wanted to leave. You still wanted something new, but that doesn't mean that it has to feel like that slow death anymore. We can still want greater things, but not suffer where we're at that moment. And it's just with simple perception.
That's right.
Of what that looks like and what that means to us.
And you said that so well, right? Because that is exactly what happened, right? It nothing about the work situation had changed other than what I thought about it, right? And again, I'm not trying to say anybody should love their job if they were really that miserable ahead of time or, beforehand, right? But it wasn't as miserable. So the key word that you just mentioned there that I want to hone in on is that suffering. I was creating my own suffering if I shifted my perception, which I didn't have the tools to do before that weekend, right? I just didn't have it. And we're going to talk about that today. So the fact that that you are kind of given the tools and not just will change how you think about it, right? Like you're actually given a framework or some type of strategy or something to be able to apply to it to be able to determine, well, I don't like how I feel about it. So how would I like to feel about it? And know how to get yourself there is just extremely powerful. So I did shift certainly from suffering to at least tolerating, sometimes even more than tolerating, but at least I was tolerating and not necessarily suffering. So it was a big shift for me.
And even if you're just tolerating for the moment, it's like you open up this whole hopeful situation.
That's right.
That we can then see, okay, so I'm not super happy where I am, but I know that if I take this action or if I think this way, then we can get to where we want to be. That this is not an end all be all.
That's right.
And I think that that's a huge piece of the puzzle that we remember. It doesn't mean that we're, just dealing with things and that we're just, okay, well, I shouldn't be upset, or I should, especially when we're in these bigger positions and everybody thinks, well, you should be happy because you're got exactly where you want it to be, but then you're still miserable. Like, it's okay for you to want to change.
That's right.
But the perception of that hopefulness, that there is some sort of change that you can make, and it doesn't have to mean more than that.
That's right. That's right. So, and, something too that you mentioned that I just want to hone in on too, because I think it might be really important, right, for everybody listening, which is, it's not an either or, it's a both and, right? It's, the whole should, and, you shouldn't want that because you should be grateful, right? The should, of course, will just like kill anything. It's about what we want and what we can do, what we're willing to do, right? And so I was very grateful for my job. I was very grateful for all that I had, and I wanted more, right?
Nothing wrong with that.
That's right. So we just have to kind of live in that odd space of duality for a bit sometimes before we can make sense of the fact that both can reside in the same space for a while.
Most definitely. And I think that is a very huge point that you bring up, and that not only it can reside together, but there's nothing wrong with wanting something different. Like, once you've achieved a goal and you've gotten to somewhere, it's okay to want something different. And that doesn't mean anything bad. Again, it's all about the perception of what does that mean, or what do others think of me?
Right.
Because I want that, right?
Right.
And that's the kicker, because a lot of the times we're okay with what we want to do, but it's the outside influences that are like, well, why do you want that? Because they're in a different place. They're looking at it from their perception.
That's right.
We only need to focus on our perception.
Or worse yet, what we fear they're going to say about what we want.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Fear is one of those. And we absolutely start thinking worst case scenario of what people will think.
Mm-hmm. And
then we're surprised sometimes when people don't even have those thoughts, because we make up all of these things in our own head, which is so fun to have our egos like throwing these crazy things at us. But
exactly,
having the tools to combat those and to change your perception is a game changer. And that's what you learned.
I did. The first weekend. The very first weekend. Yeah. They didn't wait. So, which was good. It was good for me.
Yes. For
it
sure.
was really good for me.
It just changes everything. And what were those? I'm sure everybody's dying to know. What were those? Like, how did that come across for you?
So before I get into it, I mean, it is termed energy leadership. So before I get into it, I really appreciate the fact that adult learners, or adults, I should say, learn best like experientially, meaning we tend to kind of want to apply something new to something we already know. So then it helps us make sense of it, right? So I am sure that you have heard of like Enneagram and Myers-Briggs and DISC, right? Different personality assessments, right? Enneagram being like the most popular right now. And so I start off with that because it's something that most people have at least heard of if they've not done it before. And it's similar to what I'm about to explain, but it's also very different, and I'll explain why. So the Enneagram, and we'll just settle on that one, but the same applies to all of them, right? Any type of personality test offers people kind of an insight to themselves, right? Like when they take that test and then something comes back and it's like, oh yes, you're an Enneagram 2. And this is, this is how you behave and this is what you do, right? And this is what you may want to stay away from, like those types of things. I think it gives people such a sense of validation because they're like, oh, that is me. I do that. I can't believe it. And now I know that my husband's a 4 and my ex-husband's a 7 and the 7s and 2s don't match. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I am completely not an Enneagram expert. So forgive me if any of those numbers don't align. Right. But the power of them is that they help us be seen. Right. We get such a lift of validation and power and a sense of knowing ourselves when we get this report back and it tells us about ourselves. Mm-hmm. The problem or the drawback that I find, at least with clients and friends that have taken it that I know of, they can sometimes use them to stay limited. Like, well, this is just me.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Have you taken them before? Or have you seen the same in others?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think with all of those, I think I've taken a few. And while they do ring true, I see the limitations because that also actually really applies to using your intuition and being, it really applies because you start to learn how to use your intuition and listen to your intuition, right?
Yes.
But we know that our intuition and our ego want to keep us safe. And what happens is that we play the, I'm listening to my body. And today, like if we have hard things come up that we're supposed to be getting done, and we all have that. Like I'm in the middle of a lunch right now. Yes, there's plenty of days where I'm like, I really don't want to do this. And yeah, my body says, no, I need to go meditate for 5 hours.
Right? All 5 hours.
All 5 hours because we're trying to avoid things. So I see the same thing with those where we can kind of limit ourselves because we don't want to, since we know who we are, right? We don't want to step outside of that nice little comfort zone that we've kept kind of built up. But it is an interesting thing that you brought that up, that we can tend to stay kind of too tight to that.
That's right. And I think before I had become a life coach, I think I probably would have fit snugly into one of those Enneagram types, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to be straight up, and somebody should just comment on your podcast, please, if you resonate with this, which is, I got a report back that said, we think you're a 9, but we're not sure. So you need to go and do your own like validation or find someone who can help you. Oh. And that actually was even more validating for me because I know that I hate boxes and I hate limitations.
Yes.
So I was like, yes, you can't box me in, right? You're not quite sure where I fit. And every single time I read one of those things, like this is Enneagram 1, 2, 7, 9, I could find myself in little bits and pieces in all of them.
Yes.
And I was like, that's who I want to be. I want to be able to evolve and change. I want to be able to leverage the pieces and parts that work best for me to get the results I want. Right?
I'm so glad you said that because I totally don't like to be boxed in either. And I'm the same way where I see, yes, there's bigger parts of more of who I am, but I am one of those people that I like to be evolving and changing. Like I don't want to be boxed in either. And I don't want you to be able to pinpoint, oh, I'm going to do this, this, or this. Like the only thing you can be sure of is that I'm not going to do what everybody else is doing. Like
Yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
and it's so awesome to hear somebody else say that it's okay to do that. Cause it took me a while to be okay with that, because so many people want to pinpoint you and kind of put you in this box. And when you do something outside of the box, they try to like shove you right back in.
That's right.
And it's nice to know, and I've accepted this of myself, that I'm not going to be, and that people can expect me to be as much as they want, but I'm okay just going to my own beat, whether people like it or not.
That's right. And it could look different, right?
So
You and I were
yeah.
even talking before we hit record about, sometimes it's moment to moment, right?
Yeah.
You may be very in flow state 1 minute and calm and engaging, whatever. And you wait a couple minutes later, it may not be that way. It may not be happy go lucky. It may not be in flow state anymore. Like there are lots of stimuli in our environment, right? So anything can change, and it does affect us. And so, we will talk about like what that is. If that's okay, I'll just use that as a jumping point to talk about it, right? So when we talk about stimuli and we talk about circumstances, they can definitely impact us, right? Like sometimes certainly we can create our environment, right? Like you talk about manifesting, that's really important, and it is really a thing. But you know what? Sometimes we do get just crappy hand. Sometimes we get things that we have to deal with, right? So I like to think of us as co-creators of our life. So it's like this partnership, right?
Yep.
So we don't get to create 100% of everything, but we do own some responsibility for how we move forward together, dealing with things that are unexpected, right? And then of course the things that we're like, yep, I brought that here.
Yeah. Most definitely. And I totally believe in the co-creation. Even some of the things that are not so happy and so great, we do create them. We just didn't know that that's what we were creating. And I think that that's an important part of even this stuff that, I mean, not everything, obviously, like none of us have created or manifested coronavirus,
right?
But it's something we have to deal with.
That's right.
But there are some things in there that we really, sometimes we do manifest the things that we don't want because of our perceptions and how
I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. I do agree with that. But just like you said, like coronavirus is something, there's different social things like racial injustice, right? Things like that. Like some things are just as they are, right? Like they are just finite truths that are happening that we all have to deal with, right? And you even spoke on it at the beginning, like everything is not about our thoughts. So we can't just think coronavirus away. We're not, the people who believe it's here are not like crazy. And those that don't believe it's here, are not somehow just making it go away for themselves, right? So our minds don't control things to that degree, right? But they do have immense power. Our thoughts do have immense power. And it goes back to that both and, it's not either or, at least for me. I don't believe that we create 100% of everything that we experience. I do believe that it is a lot of what we do, for sure. But we always own responsibility for how we show up into every situation, right?
Yes, 100%.
And so we were talking about those stimuli, and there are 6 different kind of energy sources, if you will, right? So we're talking about energy leadership, and I think it's just really important to just talk about energy in and of itself. I know that your community will completely get the fact that, Albert Einstein started this conversation, and scientists to this day dealing with, quantum physics, right? We are made of energy. Pretty much everything on this earth is vibrating at some energetic level, right? So we're all made of energy. So it really makes sense that when you take that into account and you realize that the stimuli that we also have to deal with also have energy to some degree, right? That there's this interplay that happens. right? And it's fluid. It's kind of like the stock market. It can go up, it can go down, right? It's going to do whatever it's going to do. It's going to be however volatile it's going to be. 2020 has been especially volatile. Just going to put it out there.
It has. It's been a special one.
2020 is, as I call it, a formidable opponent. Like it has brought its A game. So energy, there's like 6 different kinds. There's physical, there's mental, there's environmental, social. Let's see if I can remember them all. Spiritual and emotional, if I didn't say that one already. So there's all these different types of places where we get energy from, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I believe that for those people that might be struggling with the word energy right now, I just want them to think about perception or even mindset, kind of like you were talking about before. Mindset is not just your thoughts. It is literally what drives the way you show up in the world, the energy with which you bring to a circumstance or to a room, right? Like think about all the times when you might have gotten upset because you have to go grocery shopping again.
That's so me.
You're like, oh my God, I have to go again. I cannot believe we're out of milk. And, we're being eaten out of house and home. Everybody's going through food so fast, right? Especially when the beginning of the coronavirus, right? Like we were like, oh God, these people are eating so much food, right?
I always joke with my kids, total side note, but I always joke around, like my husband and I have a running joke of like, we're going to quit buying food if you keep eating it all. Like seriously, what is going on? Because right now on my phone, I have a list on Instacart that I've got to press go on, but I'm making sure because we just always have to order. So anyway, Side note.
But just think about the energy, right? Think about it just for 1 second. I have to go to the store. You people, please stop eating. How much have we spent in groceries this month, right? Like just that type of kind of Debbie Downer, right? Like, oh my God, I can't believe it, right?
Very low vibrational.
They're perfect words. Versus, I get to go to the grocery store to get out of the house. Let's pretend it like really wasn't coronavirus. Going during a pandemic isn't fun either, okay? But just bear with me. 2020 is just an interesting one. So as a mom, you might just use it as an escape to get out. Mm-hmm. What type of energy now does that have?
High vibration.
Right? Mm-hmm. Same exact circumstance, but you thought of it differently, right? So when we say energy, I want you guys to kind of think of that, right? Think about the mindset with which you are doing the task or talking to the person or, thinking about something, right? It's mindset or perception. Those 2 terms I'm using synonymously here with energy when we talk about it. So that's like the first part. Energy leader or energetic leadership. The first part's energy. So we've talked about that. We're all energy. And it's about mindset and perception, about the energy you bring to a situation. The second is leadership. And I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. But a couple things I want to bring up before we move on, which is number 1, lots of women resist the term leader. And we need to stop that ish. Like right now. We need to stop it. Just stop. Even if you have to push pause on this podcast and just let that sink in, you need, I'm serious. This is almost like a calling on my heart. Like, especially if you're a mom, like if you brought life into this world, you are a leader. Come on.
Yes.
Right? So
I'm right there with you.
Thank you. I'm even about to preach. Go to church up in here. So everybody is a leader, though, not just mamas, not just women, of course. Every single person is a leader, either by choice or by default. I'm going to say it again. You are a leader by choice or by default because someone is watching you. That's just all there is to it, all the time. And they are either admiring what you do, they want to emulate what you do, they want to be you, or they're judging the crap out of you. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You're still a leader, right?
Yes.
Because just as much as you have those people judging you, you have others who are like, oh my God, I wish I was her.
Yeah.
So step into it. That's all I'm trying to say. So
step into your power.
Yes.
That's what
Right?
Yep.
Oh, come on. Hurry up. Keep going. All right.
It's up to we're there to support them and to help pull them into that. And that's what we say this with love. Because we mean it because they deserve it and they're worthy of it.
That's right. That's right. And personally, I wasn't taught the idea of self-leadership until I went into coaching. I had never heard the term. I had only thought that a leader was someone kind of given the title, if you will, and more specifically in kind of a, a work environment. Right?
Yeah.
And I was a leader. I have been a supervisor and a manager for a good number of years. So I considered myself a leader in that capacity very easily. But never had I thought about what self-leadership meant. Like, how am I leading myself? How am I responsible for how I show up in the world? And that was a game changer. I was like, wait, that's a thing? I'm not supposed to just lead other people. I'm supposed to lead myself. Wait, I need a minute.
Pump the brakes. I don't understand.
Rewind.
But it's so true. It's so true. And it's so powerful that you were talking about this. Because this is what people need to hear. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to break it down for you. First of all, I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that I'm not taking credit for what I'm going to share with you. It was all Bruce Schneider's brainchild. Energetic leadership is his brainchild. He has something called the energetic self-perception chart. And, we can give a link to it in the show notes if you would like. But really what Jacqueline and I wanted to do was just give you guys just a little snippet of what it means and what it kind of looks like in your life. I'm just trying to give you like really the essence of it so that you can see a framework really for how to show up differently when you want, right? Because I think that's what's missing a lot of times, especially like from the Enneagrams and stuff. Like, they don't tell you, well, if there's something you don't like and you're an Enneagram 1, how do you move to an Enneagram 5? There's no guidance for that, right? And so that's what I love about energetic leadership, because it actually gives you a framework of helping you understand that, number one, and we'll talk about this, there is no level that is good or bad. So we're just going to ask for you all just to withhold judgment. There's nothing good or bad about any level. They all serve a purpose. They all have advantages and disadvantages. And so, but when you go through them, you'll be able to hear the different way that you can show up to something with the different levels. And then you get to decide, how do you want to show up? And if you're showing up in a certain way and you don't mind it and you like it and the results that you're getting are perfect for you, keep doing it. There's no good or bad here. Okay. Yeah. So what I want to start out with is that the energetic leadership is pretty much based upon the fact that we have two different types of energy. One is catabolic. The second is anabolic. Catabolic, and both of these terms, by the way, you can kind of look them up. Catabolism and anabolism are very common terms that are used when scientists describe how metabolism works. So in essence, catabolism or catabolic is in the breakdown of molecules. Okay, so you're breaking down molecules in order to get energy, right? Because it's usually something that happens under stress. It's for fight or flight, right? Like, you are breaking down energy so you can go run like mad, right? Or beat up somebody, right? Protect your kids, save the dying dog, like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So Catabolic, just remember, is kind of breaking down. It's very contracting energy. Yeah, just think of it that way. Okay. And then anabolic is the opposite. It builds up. They compound on each other, and it's very expansive. Okay. So one thing that I want you all to think about is, think about those people that you've been around sometimes where they are just like, it just seems like they're always so happy and they just have this beautiful presence to them. Like they seem like they're always smiling. They're very just supportive and accepting, right? Mm-hmm. Right? That person you would normally coin as being someone who is anabolic, right? It kind of just infuses in you. Like you want to be around them, right? Like you want to compound that energy. You're like, I want that. I want to be around that person. And conversely, think about the person who's like toxic. Mm-hmm. And the person who just weighs you down. And it's like the last person you want to be near, the last person you want to talk to, because you're like, oh my God.
Energy vampire.
There you go. Yeah. Right? And you just said it perfectly. Energy vampire. Like sucking your energy from you, right? Yes. And so that's catabolic, right? Those are just very good examples of like the light and heavy energy. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and even though we just kind of used catabolic in kind of a negative or bad way because of energy vampires, we're going to put some context around this. Okay. So I want to keep challenging you all to every time you think that it might be bad or good, just eliminate the label. All right. So the energetic self-perception chart or energetic leadership believes that we are all accessing any number of levels of energy between 1 and 7, and we don't necessarily resonate at one particular level for very long. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just like you and I were talking earlier, like there could be 1 minute where you're like light as a feather, everything's fine and beautiful, right? And then something happens and boom, right? Like it is all over. Okay. Yeah. So again, remember stock market, it can be volatile, right? Some kind of stimulus happens, somebody buys some stock, somebody, does whatever, and all of a sudden there's a madhouse happening, right? We're just energetic beings. The same thing can happen to us. Okay. So when I go through the 7 levels, I don't want you to think like, oh yes, that is me 100% of the time. That is me. It's not. Okay.
I can't.
Nope. Mm-hmm. You are like a percentage, let's say, of almost all the levels at any one time. And it can just shift. Okay. Just like waves in an ocean, like you might go up and then you might go down. So it's a bit, it's fluid. Okay.
It is. It's like a little roller coaster, and we all have those dips and those highs, and sometimes we fall really, really fast, and then other times we get to stay up higher a little bit more.
That's right. And you might know better about this than I do, but I would say that stagnant energy is probably not the best energy to begin with, meaning still energy. Like you want your energy moving.
Yes. Yeah. You always want your energy moving, because just like with anything, I mean, anything that's stagnant, you're not moving forward, but you're also, not having those pieces that challenge you to move you out of that stagnant. Stagnant energy can be very, it, almost like you said earlier, like you feel like you were slowly dying in there. Mm-hmm. That's stagnant energy. Mm-hmm. That's where you don't feel, I mean, we've got the really bad energy that like you just feel awful about it. But there's movement there. That if you just do one thing or the other, like you can change it or move it, and it is fluid. But the stagnant energy, you feel like there's no hope one way or the other.
Yes. And so on that note, we're actually going to talk about the first energy, level 1. Mm-hmm. This might trigger some people. So if it triggers you, just stay within yourself to figure out why you're triggered. So level 1 energy is related to the core thought of feeling like a victim. And I know there's probably lots of people who are like, that's never me. Okay. So a victim energy. Oh, and I should have prefaced this. I'm sorry. As we go through all the energy levels, I have come up with a way so that you could understand how it could be applied. Because remember, this is to empower you to be able to choose the energy level that you want, or to at least see yourself and be able to identify what level you are resonating at based upon the mindset or the perception you have, right? Mm-hmm. So the scenario that I've developed for you is that you all are business owners and that you've had a customer complain. We never like that, right? That's painful, right? So if you're in level 1, your response might look something like, I should have known my offer was terrible. I'm not meeting the needs of my customer. I'm not cut out for this, right? Mm-hmm. So it may result in the feelings of like hopelessness, giving up, maybe terminating your project or your effort, right? Or not supporting it well because you don't feel it's worth it. Okay? That right there is an existence of stagnated energy. You are not moving. You are just feeling kind of stuck. You're feeling hopeless, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about, you mentioned hopeful, right? Earlier on. So at this point, we're feeling just defeated. We're feeling self-doubt, right? Guilt, maybe, whatever it might be. Just think of different types of feelings that you might have when someone complains, right? And you're just kind of like, it might feel like a hit in the gut, especially if it's been something you've been working on for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I want to reiterate that that's not necessarily bad. And when I went through my coaching, to hammer this home, because of course, so many of us are used to labels, you know, it's something's good or bad, right or wrong, you know, better, worse, that kind of thing. We obviously were struggling because we had to really unlearn labels. And, you know, they would go through these different tests and they would say, okay, is level 1 or is this, you know, response bad? And we're like, yes. And they're like, no, it's not, right? And they said, imagine your child died. Would you feel grief? Would you just want to sit and just feel the pain of that? And we were like, yes. And they were like, what level is that? And we were like, 1. Mm-hmm. So do you see? It's not bad. We would never tell someone who just lost a child, don't feel that way, right? Grief is a process. So this can take on different lives, especially as an entrepreneur, right? Because lots of times, as I know you are doing so much right now, you have your hands in so many things. It feels like birth sometimes when you like see something, right? Come to life.
Yep.
Yeah. So if something happens and if someone like complains, right, that might feel like it's just tearing you apart inside.
Yeah, it can hit very, very low and it can feel like a personal attack.
Right. That's right.
That's where the victim comes in.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And if people are interested and they want to check out the energetic self-perception chart, it's busy. So you got to take your time to kind of look into it. Like I said, we're simplifying it here. But what you just said, it'll feel like a personal attack. Level 1 is pretty much primary's ego. Everything's about me, right? Mm-hmm. Like, well, I did something wrong. I failed. I can't do this. I'm not enough, right? Everything is very focused, if you will. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So we're going to move to level 2. And these don't necessarily have to be done in order, by the way. On the energetic self-perception chart, it obviously is kind of an orderly structure and you'll see that. But, you know, it's not like you have to start at level 1 and go to level 2, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you can tap into any one that you feel you have access to. So level 2 is conflict. So we're now starting to be able to move in this level. Okay, we're not stagnant, we're moving. So again, using the same exact scenario, we could be like, wait, what? What do they know? Right? I can't believe they're complaining about my stuff. Right? They knew what they bought. They agreed. They signed the contract. Right?
I can hear all of this being said. That's why I'm laughing, because that's not like, oh my goodness, it's victim, me, I did something wrong. And then you go into, it's that you're moving on that wave of feelings through this conflict, or not the conflict, but this scenario.
Right. Right. So now there's a lot more, there's conflict, and there's a lot of blame, anger, and it's outward focused, right? But here's the trick, y'all. You guys could also have conflict internally.
Yeah.
How could I have been so stupid? I should have known not to do business with her. I knew better. So now you're blaming yourself, right? It can go either way. It just depends on where we are, right? It's different for each person, right? So even though I'm giving you guys like these, scenarios, it's not a one size fits all, like, oh yes, you had to have said that in order for it to fit. I want you guys just to focus on, level 1 is kind of victim, which means it's just me, something is happening to me, right? That you have no power. Versus now, all of a sudden, you're taking your power, but you're actually being quite forceful with it. Okay?
Whether it's outward or inwards.
That's right. Now, the good thing is that there's movement now.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of times, people will use level 2 energy they'll push through. Right? Oh, they told me I can't do it. You watch me. That's even level 2, because now you're thinking that there's a barrier, and you're going to prove to someone else that they can't stop you. Right? That's still forced.
Because where there's a conflict, there is a resolution. Whereas victimizing, there's not a resolution to victimizing.
Right.
So movement forward or backwards, which way you decide to take it.
That's right. All right. So moving on to level 3. This is where things get interesting. Now, before I forget, levels 1 and 2 are considered, or they're 100% catabolic. Okay. So it is that breaking down, very fight or flight, forceful energy. Okay. Levels 3 through 7 are anabolic. Level 3 is actually a bridge, so it has some catabolic to it. But we consider 3 through 7 anabolic. And so level 3 is considered responsibility. And this is where you then start to consider what responsibility you own in this problem, right? With your client, right? So maybe you don't like the fact that she complained, but you got to deal with it, right? It's just part of business. It's going to happen, right? You're trying not to take it personally, right? So you're working really hard to try to kind of, make it, compartmentalize it, right? Like it's just business, even though it hurts. Like it's just business. We're trying to take responsibility for how we're showing up in a moment, but yet we're still dealing with some egoic issues around it,
Yeah. But it's not taking it so personally. Like
right.
Victim.
Right. And again, there's movement here, and it's done by responsibility, primarily self-awareness, right? Like you are able to kind of, come out of your self state to be able to see it more as a circumstance, and how you want to approach it. So you're going to take some type of responsibility for it, not full responsibility, but you're willing to take some type of responsibility for how you show up. All right, level 4 is primarily one of concern. So now it's this dance that we're doing, right? 1 and 2 is very self-focused. 3, we're trying to kind of move away from ourselves. Like we're playing with the idea, right, that we can let go. 4 is like all in customer. Wow, I am so sorry she was disappointed in my service or my offer and my project. I want to do everything I can to fix it. I want to make her happy. We are almost 100% focused on someone else. Okay. So now we've almost like the pendulum is just almost swung to the other side. Okay. So the thing is though, is that when we do that, we're doing it actually in an interesting way. We do it because we want to help or fix because it makes us feel better. We're not necessarily doing it because we really want them to be happy. Like them being happy certainly makes us feel good. And then that's why we do it. And so, I just want to make sure you guys understand that little nuance. And obviously, the more you learn about this stuff, it's really, really interesting, but just know that, level 4 is more of concern for someone else. So it kind of takes you away out of the ego part and kind of gets you into the help or fix type of state. Yeah. And I know you probably have to deal with that a lot, right? When, you're dealing with whatever customers you're dealing with, whether it's even the podcast or the salon.
Yeah.
Right.
There's so many scenarios. And it's funny that you put that because obviously we want to have concern. It is about the customer. And we've heard that a lot in our lives. Like the customer's always right. And the customer, we have to be concerned. But the funny thing is when you're saying this, like automatically people think, oh yeah, that's good. That's where we're supposed to be. But like you said before, it's not good or bad because sometimes we can be overly concerned and put so much into trying to fix when there's a nice balance somewhere in there, because like it's not always that can be a positive or where we're supposed to be.
That's right. Yeah. And you just said something key, which leads us into level 5. Level 5 is pretty much reconciliation. It's also known as the opportunistic energy. And that is where that win-win or that balance that you speak of comes from. So you probably work a lot from level 5 or higher, just you in and of yourself, just knowing you and knowing how you deal with people. Level 5 is now better finding the balance and not just wanting to please someone else because that makes you also feel good, right? It's literally wanting to work to find the opportunity in the struggle and how you both can get what you want amicably. Yes. Right? And so maybe it looks like, I can see her perspective, I can see her confusion, I can see why she was upset, right? So you're validating, like truly validating the pain or the issue or the perspective that person's coming from. But then you also realize that her feedback or her difficulty can help you improve your service or your project or, whatever it might be, right? And then you might even want to collaborate. Well, maybe I'll see if she's willing to, do some type of beta work, right? If it's some new, effort you're working on, right? Or she'll do some type of survey or something like that then actually gets you to even, open up even more to better your service or project. Whereas, as you could clearly tell from the prior levels, it was very limiting, very contracting, right? Like, how do I just kind of deal with this one situation? And all of a sudden, we're kind of broadening our horizons a little bit. And we're like, wait, is there an opportunity here for this to take on a different life, right?
Yes.
Than just the one situation that's happened.
It's a key component.
Absolutely.
In my perception of all this.
Yeah.
Oh, I went too fast. I got you.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. So like you guys see, it's level 6 is synthesis. And for those that aren't used to that term, it just means kind of like not necessarily a oneness with everything, but more of things kind of coming together. Right? So I was trying, in my mind, I was a little hesitant because I was trying to figure out how to liken it to manifesting. What is that word when you have, like people call it like God winks, or it's not a coincidence. It's a,
Oh gosh.
oh, I can't remember what it's called, but
I can't either.
yeah, but one of
We'll
those
think
things,
of it after we're off the podcast.
right?
Yeah.
But one of those things where, it just, synchronicity. That's what it's called, right? So when you feel like something is synchronous, like it just, yep, that's exactly, something I asked for, right? Or it makes sense that it's fitting together. The pieces of the puzzle are fitting together, right? Like that is synthesis, where things just feel like they are culminating for the higher good or for the best reasons, right? And I know you completely feel that. So from our scenario, it could be, I'm so grateful to her, right? And to her feedback. And I knew in my gut that there was something missing from this service, right? And I feel like her feedback was exactly the piece that I was missing, and I just couldn't see it, right? Maybe it's more like, I knew that my service wouldn't be perfect for everyone, but this piece is helpful because it will help me vet my future clients, right? Like whatever it is, it was just always, it's seemingly the missing piece, or a missing piece that was meant all the time to have happened to come together to help you get to the next state, right?
Most definitely.
Yeah. And level 6 is a lot of intuition. Like, yep, I knew it in my gut, right? I knew this was going to happen. I was waiting for it to come, just didn't know how it was going to come, right?
Yeah.
It could also be the beginning of like flow state. Like I think we've all been there, right? Where we just lose track of time and we are just on it. Like we are banging out work, we're being productive, we're just full of all kinds of ideas, right?
Yeah.
It's the beginning of that flow state.
It's beautiful because when you're starting from the victim mentality and everything, like in that flow, that missing piece, that one piece that we perceived as negative to begin with a client, being unhappy, having a complaint.
That's right.
Being that missing piece, and then that puzzle starts to come together, and it's taking that perception to shift it to something different versus the other levels. And I just love the flow and the seeing the circle come full, or seeing it all come full circle.
Yeah. And so the last level is 7, and that one is creation. We can also just call it flow, right? And I'm sure that you tap into this one a lot. I will make sure that everybody understands that it is not believed that most humans tap into this one much at all. Doesn't mean we can't. It just means that it is, in essence, the highest order of energy that there is. Like in this scenario that we were talking about, everything was exactly as it should be. There's never judgment. It was never good nor bad. Every single thing is happening as it should be. Right? And so if you are resonating high or for a long duration from level 7, you are definitely in flow. And in essence, you are just getting like downloads from, a higher self. Right? So it's not something that I want people to like, oh yes, I always want to be at level 7. Like don't doubt yourself for trying to strive for that. But again, I want to reiterate that just as the human body, as it is set up, as our mind is configured, right? We are a soul in our human body. We are limited by this earthly vehicle that we have.
Yeah.
And so we all have to deal with it, right? And so we can maximize it as best we can. And so, if we know that we have these different levels, like I want to make sure you guys understand, like it's not, like I said, it's not a step-by-step process that you have to go through. It could be just you understanding, yes, when I have someone who complains about my services, I typically respond in a level 1, right? I just go there. I deep dive into the, oh, I suck. I'm terrible. I'm not cut out for this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then you can kind of start to see maybe how you gradually come up. Maybe you miss level 2 altogether, which is great. Like if you don't have any conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you immediately go to 3, which is just very, forgiving and amicable, right? Like you are trying to kind of just make sense of it all and, take responsibility for your aspect of it, right? Instead of getting angry, right? And again, there's no right or wrong way. It's only wrong if you feel like you don't want to behave that way. If you don't want the results, or if you don't want to feel the feelings that you're feeling because of how you're acting by default, then that's why I wanted to give you this opportunity, so that way you knew that, there's other options available, right? So it's not just this kind of airy-fairy, just change your mindset. Just think more positively. Like you actually have this actionable, like, what would it look like to take responsibility? Are you willing to take responsibility? That's just an idea, right? For moving up into level 3, right? Or for level 5, what would a win-win look like? Is a win-win possible?
And I love this. Like I could go down this whole other rabbit hole with this, but we don't want to go way, way over time. So, but I will put in there that we all have energy we can see actually in the brain. There's scientists, I'm actually in a certification for neuroscience, learning all about how to actually see the energies in the brain and how our beliefs are on automation, our thoughts. So how we automatically, whether you go automatically to number 1 victim mode, or you automatically go to concern, level 4.
That's right.
It's automated in our brains. Doesn't mean that it's not fixable or changeable, but there is an automation to your first gut reaction.
Yep.
And if we're conscious of this and we know these levels and we're not happy with where our automation goes, there is a way to change the brain patterns and actually change that automation. Takes a little bit of time, but there is a way to do that. And so again, this all goes back to that we are in control of our beliefs, our thoughts, our mindset, our energy. And there's ways to change that if we're not happy, or if we strive for something different or more, or whatever the case may be. There's it's not just this airy, like, oh, it's just energy. No, there's actually brain base to all of this and automations, and we are in control. And that's why I really could go on about that, but we won't.
No.
Maybe another podcast. We'll do another one and continue down that road with how you can change those automations. But this has just been, so I hope for our viewers that it's been eye-opening and helpful to see these different levels and to know that they're all neutral, really are neutral. And we don't have to put good or bad. It's all how we perceive those levels to be. So
that's right. Just are you getting the results you want?
Yeah.
If you are, keep doing you.
Yep.
And if you're not, how do you change it?
Yes.
That's right.
I love it. I loved everything about today. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to make sure that people can follow you and they can find you and, continue with all of your beautiful wisdom. Where can they find you?
So I am most active on Instagram. So you can find me there. My handle is Real Selfish Mama. And I am on Facebook at Selfish Mama and the web at selfishmama.com.
Love it. And I am going to, like I do with all the podcasts, I'll make it super easy, put it in the blog, all the show notes, and they can follow you through all of them. And also, you brought up earlier, like, comment, let us know, where do you fall? How did this feel to you? Like, where do you need support? Because that's why we're doing this. So if you do need support and you just want to do a comment, like, leave us a comment. Let us know how this resonated with you. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show and for bringing such an amazing level of energy to the show. And thank you to all the viewers for being here. I really hope that you learned a lot and that you go follow all of Tina's stuff, because she's amazing at what she does, and she has so much to offer. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, catch us next week, and have a wonderful week. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today. Please make sure that you go over to the blog and follow all the links for our guests and get the downloads that we talked about. I would also really love and appreciate if you would share this podcast with your friends and family. And if you wouldn't mind taking just a minute to leave a review, that would mean the world to me. Thank you again so much from the bottom of my heart for listening and staying tuned. Can't wait to see you next week on the show.